Tonight, death in the cockpit. High over the Atlantic, a jumbo jet loaded with passengers when the pilot suddenly dies.
She was crying. They went and grabbed equipment and stuff, and then they all ran back, and that was it. It was quiet.
I'm Maggie Rodriguez. Also tonight, a message for the Ayatollah. He ordered them not to march, but hundreds of thousands ignored him, demanding change in Iran. Ernest Hemingway wrote some of his greatest works here in Cuba, where today bitter enemies found common ground and saved this treasured piece of history.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is off. It happened in one of the worst possible places, high over the Atlantic Ocean this morning. The pilot of a Continental Airlines jumbo jet carrying 247 passengers died suddenly in the cockpit. But a backup co-pilot jumped into his seat, and the plane, en route from Brussels, landed safely in Newark, New Jersey, right on time. A remarkable flight. Priya David has details.
Continental Airlines Flight 61 glided calmly through the New Jersey mist, carrying passengers who had no idea how harrowing their journey had actually been. Pilot in command Craig Linnell had suddenly died mid-flight.
All we heard was that they needed a doctor on board the plane. Doctor went to the front of the plane. That's the last we heard. Very professional crew. Everything was very calm.
I was a little bit scared when I heard what had happened. I'm glad that obviously Continental didn't tell us while we were on the plane.
60-year-old pilot Linnell died about 4 hours into the flight from Brussels when the FAA says the plane was on autopilot. A relief pilot, mandatory for flights of 8 hours or more, joined the co-pilot and took over control. Belgian cardiologist Julian Sterjuven attempted to resuscitate Linnell.
And when I came in, it was just too late. We tried to defibrillate him, but it was no use anymore.
After the doctor pronounced the pilot dead, the crew moved his body to their private rest area, out of view of the passengers. The captain's wife spoke by phone to our Houston affiliate.
The co-pilot thought he was sleeping, but he nodded off, and he couldn't wake him.
Pilots used to have to give up their wings before they turned 60. But 2 years ago, the international regulations changed, upping the mandatory retirement age to 65.
On both international and domestic flights, if the pilot in command is over 60, the co-pilot must be younger than 60. Former airline pilot and aviation expert John Cox points out all pilots are monitored by FAA-certified physicians. Pilots under 40 get a physical once a year. Over 40, every 6 months.
I think the change of the rule to allow pilots to fly to age 65 does not have any safety implications at all.
Of the 24 instances in the past 3 decades in which a member of the flight crew fell ill during a domestic flight, National Transportation Safety Board documents show none of the pilots were over 60 years old. No one died. There have been 2 recent pilot deaths internationally. Last year, a co-pilot died of natural causes on a flight from Britain to Cyprus. And in 2007, a pilot became ill during a flight from Texas to Mexico and died hours after the plane landed at a hospital. Aviation expert Peter Goles says the mandatory relief crew helped Flight 61 fly safely to its destination.
With a relief flyer on board, you've got a full crew for landing. I think the passengers were well protected.
Now, domestic flights usually don't have a third pilot because flights under 8 hours are not required to carry a relief crew. However, experts point out over land, domestic planes can usually get to an airport for an emergency landing if they need to.
And pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Priya David, thank you. There is severe weather tonight in many parts of the U.S., from triple-digit temperatures in the south to downpours in the Midwest. That's on top of last night's tornadoes. No deaths were reported, but the storms really shook things up. Here's Dean Reynolds.
Wow, that's awesome.
Across the Midwest, it was a night to remember.
Whoa, did you see the power flash?
Yeah. Storm chaser Brandon Ivy was in south central Nebraska when an ominous twister approached. Tornadoes raked several Midwestern states, uprooting trees, damaging buildings, rolling semis, and shaking up residents, including Jessica Wright in Norborn, Missouri.
It sounded like a train coming straight through. I mean, these winds, our trees, were way over. It was crazy.
In Austin, Minnesota, Margie Nelson counted her blessings.
We looked to the north and we totally could see the funnel cloud. You just gotta be thankful, I guess, if your family's okay.
Back in Nebraska, what set this video apart from others is that Brandon Ivy had his 2 children in the car with him.
That's so close to us.
Yeah, that's a big tornado, huh?
Today, he explained why.
They both wanted to go. They were both excited about it. Would you want to do it again?
Yep.
Or would you rather go to the babysitter next time?
Do it again.
Want to do it again?
His enthusiasm aside, storm chasers know that one wrong move
just went right over us.
could be deadly. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Chicago.
Now to the latest out of Iran, where protesters defied a direct order from the supreme leader today by holding another massive rally. Iran's government wants desperately to end the dispute over the presidential election, but the protest movement keeps gaining strength. From Tehran, here's Elizabeth Palmer.
For the 4th day in a row, a river of protesters streamed through the streets of Tehran. They know exactly why they're here, as one of them told us by phone.
The only thing that people want now is to have a new election.
Tens of thousands of people marched silently and mourned those killed at the start of the week. State television is now saying 8 people died in violent clashes. Unconfirmed reports say some of them were students at the University of Tehran. This amateur video is said to show the aftermath of an attack on student dormitories earlier this week. But a few smashed computers and the threat of much worse hasn't slowed down the opposition. Today, the defeated candidate Mir Hossein Mousavi made a personal appearance at the rally, thrilling the vast crowd. Organizers say they're inspired by the ideals of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, a mass protest movement which overthrew the government. Now, 30 years later, no one wants a return to chaos and bloodshed, but that hasn't stopped authorities from embarking on a wave of arrests. Saeed Leilaz, a political commentator, was picked up yesterday. So was the reformist cleric Ali Abtahi and Ibrahim Yazdi, a well-known dissident, as well as hundreds of other bloggers, local journalists and activists. Today, Iran's Guardian Council, in a move that appears to buy time, said it would meet with all the defeated candidates next week to discuss their complaints about the election. And President Ahmadinejad backpedaled on his dismissal of the protesters as dust. The remark created a web sensation. "If we're dust, we'll show him a sandstorm," wrote the bloggers. Today, the president said he didn't mean all of them, just those who caused the disturbances and damaged public property.
Friday is the day of rest in Iran. And in an unusual move, the supreme leader is going to preach at the main prayer service, which is broadcast nationally. Everyone in the country will be listening very closely for clues as to how he plans to end this crisis. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Tehran.
Halfway around the world, tensions between the U.S. and North Korea are ratcheting up again tonight. The North may be preparing to test fire another long-range missile, possibly towards Hawaii. And American warships are tracking a North Korean cargo vessel that could be carrying banned weapons. David Martin is at the Pentagon.
The Gangnam may not look like much, but it is suddenly attracting a lot of attention from the U.S. military. It is the first North Korean ship to set sail since the UN Security Council passed a resolution calling on the U.S. and other navies to intercept North Korean vessels believed to be carrying arms. That means a U.S. warship could request permission to search the Gangnam, but it could not use force to board her if North Korea refused, which it almost certainly will. North Korea has threatened to retaliate if its ships are interfered with, and is preparing this new launch pad to fire off a long-range missile capable of reaching Hawaii. 2 previous tests have failed, but the Pentagon is taking no chances, positioning a giant radar at sea to track it and sending interceptor missiles to Hawaii as a backup to interceptors based in California and Alaska.
I think we are in a good position, should it become necessary, to protect American territory.
That a ship like the Gangnam, here seen entering Hong Kong harbor, where it was halted for safety violations 2 years ago, could become a key player in such a high-tech standoff is almost laughable. Except that's exactly what's happening. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Two notes now from Capitol Hill. The Senate today gave final approval to the Cash for Clunkers program. Drivers who turn in their gas guzzlers for more fuel-efficient models will qualify for cash incentives of $3,500 to $4,500. And for the first time ever, the Senate voted to make a formal apology for slavery and racial segregation. The resolution was approved unanimously on the eve of the celebration that commemorates the end of slavery in this country. Up next here on the CBS Evening News, school's out, but these students didn't want the semester to end. So many challenges for the children of the recession. The recession has really taken a toll on America's schools. Tax revenues are way down, forcing at least 36 states to cut or propose cutting funds for education. And with so many Americans losing their homes and moving away with their children, many school districts are faced with a new problem: empty desks. In partnership with USA Today, Ben Tracy continues our series, CBS Reports, Children of the Recession.
Classes are out at Teal Middle School in Modesto, California, and this year students learned some very tough lessons.
I heard one of the students saying that my mom lost her job and now we might live on the streets.
Rebecca Vasquez is a 7th grader. She's 13. She now shares this 2-bedroom house and one tiny bathroom with 11 other relatives.
We're all going to share.
Many of them recently lost their own homes.
They had nowhere else to go, so they came here. Bye, Mom.
School is the one place Rebecca has been able to escape her problems.
I can get away and forget about home and just come to school and do schoolwork.
And now that's changed.
Yeah, because our school's closing.
Find a friend, come give a hug.
After 57 years, this isn't just the last day of the school year. It's the last day for good.
So this is just empty, not used at all?
Yeah. Classrooms have sat empty for years, used only for storage. There just aren't enough kids anymore. In 2003, 1,261 students attended Teal. Now it's 541. Just this year, 77 more students left.
And you remember swarms of kids moving, and now it's just, you wonder, is everyone sick today? I mean, where'd they go?
Modesto has been hit hard. It has the 3rd highest rate of foreclosure filings in the country. When parents leave town to find work, their kids leave their schools.
My friend just left to Orange County. Her name is Melanie, and she used to be in all my classes. Now she's not.
Closing Teal Middle School will save the school district nearly $1 million a year. Throughout California, 20,000 teachers have been laid off in the past 2 years. Florida has lost nearly 40,000 students since 2005. And in Michigan, 29 Detroit schools are being shut down. Eddie Solorio is an 8th grader. He's 14. His dad just moved to San Jose for a new job, and Eddie plans to follow him this summer.
We're going to lose our house pretty soon. We're going to have to move somewhere else.
You're going to lose your house? How come?
Couldn't afford it no more.
The rest of these students will also be moving, split between 2 middle schools. One is their crosstown rival Glick, built at the height of the housing bubble.
I know there's been a lot of questions coming around.
The morning students found out which school they'll be heading to. Their biggest fear was clear.
I have so many friends here, and I'm not really sure if they're going or not going to Glick.
Their teacher feels the same way.
I don't know which teachers I'll be with. I don't know who my principal will be. Congratulations. Thank you.
These will be the last diplomas handed out at Teal. And as the final minutes of the final day tick away, things are already different.
They want to be a part of something at this age, and they're a part of Teal. And now that will be closing, and so who can I be a part of?
Losing their second home may be one lesson these students never forget. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Modesto, California.
He's the man at the center of the extraordinary protest movement in Iran. Mir Hossein Mousavi insists he won the presidential election there, only to have it stolen from him. He's been cast as an outsider, anxious for reform. But as Mark Phillips reports, that's not exactly the case.
His supporters may have taken to the streets, even died for his cause. But Mir Hussein Mousavi is neither a champion of democracy as we know it, nor an advocate of great change within Iran's mullah-dominated government.
He's not a secular intellectual in the molds of Western secular intellectuals. No, he's come from within the revolution.
In fact, he was part of the revolution, a supporter of the Ayatollah Khomeini when he came to power in 1979, a government minister during the revolution's turbulent early years.
Then he became prime minister and was prime minister for nearly 8 years.
Very much an establishment figure.
Absolutely.
Even if Mousavi came to power, the change he represents is more of tone than policy. He may not deny the Holocaust, but he has made no promise to end Iran's support for the militants in Hezbollah or Hamas on Israel's border. And while he may be prepared to talk about it, he too is committed to Iran's nuclear program.
He's a pragmatist moderate.
But in the Iranian context?
In the Iranian context, absolutely. The Iranian system is not democracy, nor a theocracy. It's a mixture of both.
The Iranian system, with the electorate at the bottom and the supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini at the top, is a complicated, overlapping cocktail of religion and politics that no president could easily change, even if he wanted to. Voters elect a 290-member parliament and a president and an assembly of experts, 86, quote, virtuous and learned religious scholars who select the supreme leader. But layered on top of that is a 12-man extremely powerful Guardian Council, appointed largely by the supreme leader. It gets to decide who even runs for the presidency or parliament. To that add an Expediency Council, appointed again by the Supreme Leader, that is supposed to mediate disputes between Parliament and the Guardian Council. Whether they're demonstrating inside Iran or outside of it, the supporters of Mousavi see him less as a counter-revolutionary figure and more of a reformer. To them, he's become the acceptable face of the Iranian Revolution. And one they're not ready to give up on yet. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Back here at home, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton spent today working from home in Washington and nursing a broken elbow. Mrs. Clinton slipped and fell yesterday in the State Department garage, fracturing her right elbow. She'll have surgery to repair it probably within a week. Next, a restoration project of historic proportion. Ernest Hemingway's Cuban home saved 50 years after the Castro Revolution. Finally tonight, 70 years ago, Ernest Hemingway moved into a house in Cuba called Finca Vigía, or Lookout Farm. After the Castro Revolution, Hemingway left, and his house was trapped in the bitter clash of policy and principles between the U.S. and Cuba. It sat there on the edge of Havana, nearly untouched, falling into disrepair, until some determined people decided it was time to put politics aside. From Havana, here's Kelly Kobiella.
This Havana house is more than a home. It's a time capsule. The clock stopped in the summer of 1960 when Ernest Hemingway walked out for the last time.
Well, this is what it's all about.
For 20 years, Hemingway lounged in these seats, drank from these bottles, wrote one of his greatest novels, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and dreamed up his last great classic on this typewriter, Old Man and the Sea, inspired by fishing trips on this boat that sits right outside the house.
This door gets closed and it gets exposed to the rain.
Bill DuPont is an American leading a team of experts in a rare collaboration with the Cuban government to preserve the home, right down to the wall where Hemingway obsessively recorded his weight.
We might be the only architects, professionals, engineers, conservators that are licensed to do our job, to act as professional designers in Cuba since the revolution.
They were able to help the Cubans take the house from this 4 years ago to this today.
They know some special things about the preservation, but we know how to preserve in tropical climates.
Hemingway spent 30 years in and out of Cuba. He met Fidel Castro only once. Today, it's hard not to walk in his Havana footsteps. Hemingway is a major tourist attraction here. His favorite hotel room is a mini museum.
And what Hemingway fan wouldn't want to stand where the author once stood? But that, critics say, is part of the problem. You help restore the home, you help the Cuban tourist trade, which then helps the Castro regime. But conservationists say this isn't about politics. It's about the legacy of a great American author.
Stored in the basement of this old house are thousands of Hemingway papers, unseen by American eyes in more than 40 years.
There were many letters that he had written to Mary Hemingway when they were both war correspondents during World War II.
Like this one to his wife in the fall of 1944. "I'm so damned anxious not to be killed, Pickle, on account of loving you." And this letter from fellow writer Sinclair Lewis. "Jesus, that's a great book, Bell Tolls."
What would have happened if these documents had been left as is?
They would have continued to deteriorate.
Instead, Hemingway's words and his world on this island will be safe for generations. Kelly Kobiella, CBS News, Havana.
And that's the CBS Evening News. For Katie Couric, I'm Maggie Rodriguez. Russ Mitchell will be here tomorrow, and I'll see you on The Early Show. Thanks for watching. Good night.